Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. Right on, brother. Harlem everywhere. We want to take time out today and speak at length about a number of things. We want to repeat basically the things that were said down across the bay on Thursday night, San Marin. We want to expand a little. Now, the speech today is not going to be a rough, tough, go-get-'em speech. I think that we need something beyond that. We want to try and define a lot of the terms that the party uses and try and put them in some perspective so that all of us can understand what we're talking about. It is necessary for us to be militant and to fight and to be revolutionary, but it is not sufficient unless our understanding is going to match our badness. Now, we all bad, we know that, so we must move beyond being bad. Now, to begin, since, it's about 10 months now, when we started the campaign for Brother Huey, we have been saying, free Huey. If Huey is not freed, the sky is the limit. Not only does the Bay Area know this, not only does the United States of America know this, but the entire world knows this. Now, we have our Minister of Education and our captain from New York in Havana, Cuba right now, and they have released through the world press, through Prensa Latina, and through Radio Peking, the fact that if Brother Huey is not set free, the sky is the limit. Since we know that, there is no need for us to continue to talk about it. Everybody knows it. The party is well organized. The sky will cave in if Huey P. Newton is not set free. Period. And there needs to be no justification for that. We say that Huey P. Newton is a prisoner of war. And many people say that that's not true or that the party is exaggerating. I think it's clear, it's crystal clear, that the United States has declared war on black people. She did that when she took the first black man from Africa. Now, of course, she's never said so in words, and some people expect for her to come out and say, I declare war on black people. But now the United States to this day has not declared war on Vietnam, but they're in Vietnam. They have not declared war in North Korea, but they fought in North Korea. And they did not declare war on the Indians. They just wiped them out. So we must define our condition. We are at war. Minister of Defense is our leader. He is in jail. He is a prisoner of war. We must get him by any means necessary. If we cannot get him, we must retaliate. Period. Now then, some of the things we want to talk about today are very difficult for us to grasp. We in the party have been working more and more with the concepts. There are no contradictions within the party. The party works, as the Minister of Information says, on the principle of unity, discussion, unity. So we want to make that clear. Now, we want to talk about colonized America, black people inside America. We have already established the fact that we are a colonized people. Now, when a colonized people move to fight against their oppressor, there are two levels on which we must move. First, we must move psychologically. That is to say, we must prepare ourselves psychologically to think that our oppressor is not as bad as he says he is. And that's important. And we've been doing that for the last 2 years. For example, prior to the last 2 years, even though we hated the police department, we would be afraid to get up publicly and say the pigs ought to be killed. We were afraid to do that. And psychologically, we were afraid. But today, we're no longer psychologically afraid of our oppressor. Not only are we not afraid of him psychologically, we are defining for ourselves not only our own beauty, but our own state of political, economic, and cultural affairs, so that we have started the psychological battle. We are winning on that battle. It is time now to move on to exact and correct thinking, correct political ideology, and the correct tactics in order to win. And that's where we are today. Now then, on those two levels, when you begin to psychologically prepare yourselves, we call that entertainment. What we were doing in the last 2 years was entertaining ourselves. We were telling ourselves that we were bad. The hunky wasn't that bad. He wasn't worth it. We could take him. We could burn, baby, burn. We were entertaining ourselves. Today we must move from entertaining ourselves and we must begin to educate ourselves. So we're moving on a different level today. We're moving on the level of education. Now on that level, we have to ask ourselves, what is our fight? Now our fight is two-pronged. We are fighting against racism, and we're fighting against capitalism or imperialism, which is the highest state of capitalism. The government of the United States of America is racist and imperialist. Therefore, we are fighting the government of the United States of America, and we must understand that. But now we must define our terms. We must define the term racism. What is a racist and what is racism? Racism is when one race decides to brutalize, oppress, and subjugate another race of people solely because of their race. Now, that's not Webster's dictionary, that's us. We want to be able to have a working definition rather than a definition from Webster's dictionary. We can give examples to support our definition. If Jewish people decide because they are Jewish people, they are superior to Spanish people, and they subjugate, oppress, and brutalize Spanish people, then the Jewish people are acting in a racist manner. If Portuguese people decided because they were Portuguese, they had the right to oppress and suppress Arab people, then the Portuguese people are acting within a racist manner, and they are racist. If white people decide because of their color they have the right to subjugate and brutalize black people because we are black, they are acting in a racist manner, and they are in fact racist. So we must understand that. Now, if the people who are subjugated to racism decide to overthrow the racist, then they are not acting in a racist manner, nor are they reversed racist. They are moving to wipe out racism. And if they're moving to wipe out the group that act in a racist manner, they can never be called reverse racist. So black people shall not and will not defend their position when they move against racism. We are anti-racist, period. That's who we move against. Racist people, period. Now we want to talk about capitalism and imperialism. I think in defining capitalism, we run into a lot of problems because it takes so long to define it. Karl Marx wrote a book entitled Das Kapital, which is some 500 pages talking about capitalism. Essentially, we can say that in a capitalist society, capital, which is money, is the prime motive, and the profit motive, which is the gaining of more money, is what runs above everything else. That's not too good a definition, but perhaps it's the best we can do for now as we begin to clarify more and more our positions. Now let's give some examples of capitalism, because that's perhaps much better to understand than the definition itself. My father was a carpenter, a very good carpenter. Now there was a white man who lived uptown from us. He had a lot of capital, money. He would come to my father and say, "I want you to build me a house." My father would build him the house. He would pay my father $50 a week. When my father was finished building the house, he would sell the house for $25,000 and keep the money himself. Therefore, he was a capitalist. He was exploiting the labor of my father. Black people in this country suffer from capitalism. Our labor is exploited. We do the work and other people walk away with the money. That's what capitalism is all about. And we have to understand that. We have to understand that because what they're doing today is they're trying to tell us that our solution is that we should become black capitalists. And if we understand that capitalism is what we're fighting against, we will never become that which we have to fight against. That's what Nixon is talking about, black capitalism. All he's saying is he wants, instead of a white man exploiting my father, he wants a black man to do it. So that when the fight comes, I'm going to have to be fighting a black man rather than having the lines drawn the way they are today. So we've got to understand that. Got to understand that. Now then, we want to define imperialism. Imperialism is the highest stage of capitalism. That is not only, the stage of imperialism is reached when a country exploits another country. Capitalism is when people inside a country exploit people inside that country. Again, these definitions are not very clear because we're trying to work them so they fit our situation. So we have to ask you to forgive us if they're not clear. Perhaps as we move along in the next few months, they will become much more clearer. Let me give an example of imperialism. When the United States of America controlled the brave island of Cuba, the Cubans used to grow sugar cane. Now the Cubans would pick the sugar cane. white America would pay them 40 cents a day. Take the sugar cane, bring it into the United States, make sugar out of it, and then sell it back to the Cubans for a profit. So they were exploiting the entire Cuban people. The United States does this all over the world. Asia, Africa, Latin America, and black people inside the United States. Now we must begin to understand those terms. And that's very, very important. If they're not clear, then we must do more reading and have more discussion with our people so we begin to understand those terms clearly, crystal clear in our minds. They must become. Otherwise, we will end up waging the wrong fight and losing the battle. You can fight, but if you're fighting the wrong thing, you can't win. You can't win. If I'm playing football with somebody and a cat on the field and a cat on the bench, if I'm playing football against another team and there's some people standing outside the field and the other football team runs them down, they may run over them. They can't win the game because they're not running against me. So we have to understand who we're running against. We just can't run. We just can't fight. We've got to understand who we're fighting against. If we say that's what we're fighting against, we must then define what our goals are, what we want. Well, we want two things. We want a society free of racism, and we want a society that is not a capitalistic society. Now, in the economy systems of the world, there are basically three: capitalism, socialism, and communism. If we can't have capitalism, then we must talk of one of the other two, socialism or communism. We should not be afraid of those terms. We must begin to try and understand just what they mean. Now, our problem is that we do not think that socialism and communism from the Western world will fit black people. That is to say, merely because America becomes a socialist or communist state does not necessarily mean they do away with racism. So that we will continually have to push and fight for a state not only free of capitalism, but also free of racism. And for us, racism will always be primary because we are black. Because we are black. Now then, we want to begin to define some of the terms that are thrown around loosely. Terms like revolution, terms like armed struggle, revolutionary violence, counter-revolutionary violence, defensive violence, black militants, black revolutionaries, and black nationalism. Now, it's important for us to understand the word revolution because the word is thrown around so loosely that none of us know what it means. We are not now in the midst of a black revolution. Revolution means the total overthrow of a system. But revolution never begins until you seize power. You've got to seize power. Once you seize power, the revolution begins because you can change things as you see fit. Let me give you an example. Fidel Castro fought in the Sierra Maestras for several years. But while Fidel and his boys were fighting, they were not engaged in the revolution. When they took the city of Havana, they ran Batista and the American lackeys out. Then the revolution began. When Fidel Castro said, "Today, this country belongs to the masses of Cubans," that's when the revolution began, because then he could do what he wanted with the country. We have to understand that, because if they throw the terms around about black revolution will never get anywhere. Now, what is the period that comes before a revolution? The period coming before a revolution is called armed struggle. That's what we are beginning to get engaged in this country. Armed struggle is when the forces of the masses are fighting against the political structure, the powers that be, their tools, the police force, the occupied forces, to overthrow the government. So we must be clear. We are beginning to become involved in the stage of armed struggle. Armed struggle. Once we have seized power, then the revolution begins. So we have to be clear in our minds about those terms. Now then, we also want to talk about black militancy. There's a difference between black militant and a black revolutionary. A black militant is someone who is angry at the white society but wants to become part of white society. A black revolution wants to overthrow, destroy, and restructure new society. And we have to be clear in our minds. There are a lot of black militants running around this country. There are few black revolutionaries running around the country. And we have to understand that term. You see black nationalists all the time. They get up on TV today and they talk about, we'll burn your city down if you don't give us a poverty program, you know. They use the anger and the frustration of the masses of people to benefit themselves. That's a black militant. A black revolutionary says we got to change the system for all of our people. And until the system is changed, the struggle will continue. There can be no compromise with a revolutionary. With a militant, there can always be compromises and sellouts. We have to understand that in our minds as we move along. Now we want to talk about revolutionary violence and counter-revolutionary violence. Revolutionary violence is the violence that is used to destroy the status quo, that is acting and preceding and leading to a revolution. Counter-revolutionary violence is that violence which is used to maintain the status quo. For example, the police department is a counter-revolutionary force because it wants to keep things the way it is. The American forces in Vietnam are a counter-revolutionary force because they want to keep things the way they are. A revolutionary force would be a force fighting to change the status quo for the benefit of the masses of the people. The Black Panther Party is a revolutionary force because it is fighting to change the system for the masses of our people. The Viet Cong is a revolutionary force because they're fighting to change the structure of Vietnam for the masses of their people. And we have to be clear in those terms. Now then, the final term. What is a revolutionary? A revolutionary is someone who is willing to kill to bring about the change for the masses of the people. That's a revolutionary. Notice I did not say someone who's willing to die, but rather someone who's willing to kill. Because just willing to die don't make you revolutionary, it makes you stupid and a martyr. Being martyr. You know, I saw those white cats in Czechoslovakia lay down in front of the tanks. They not revolutionary, they stupid. They want to do something, shoot the Russians. Don't lay down in front of the tanks. Kill the Russians, take your country, and then do with it what you want, if you're revolutionary. But now, a lot of people get confused with revolutionaries. Because just because you pick up a gun doesn't make you revolutionary. Got to understand that. A lot of our brothers have guns. They're fighting in Vietnam. They're not revolutionary. They are counter-revolutionary. So just because you pick up the gun, you're not revolutionary. But in order to become revolutionary, you must pick up the gun. Then once you pick up the gun, armed with a correct political ideology, fighting for the benefit of the masses of our people, then you become a revolutionary. And we have to understand those terms in our minds. I know this speech is more boring than the other speeches, but I think this one is more important than the other speeches. Now then, when a people begin to move in a revolutionary form, there are three levels of attack. First, they attack the symbols of oppression. Second, they attack the tools of the oppressor. And thirdly, they attack the oppressor himself. Now, our people have shown that they are moving in a revolutionary fashion. We have demonstrated that. The burning of stores represent the burnings of the symbols of oppression. It is the first person that we contact on a day-to-day level that oppresses us. Our nearby store owner, grocery store, they sell us rotten goods for high prices. They insult our dignity. They are the symbols of oppression, so we burn them out. Now we move against the tools of the oppressor. The tools of the oppressor are those things which the oppressor employs to keep us oppressed. The police force represents the tools of the oppressor. And consciously, our people around this country are moving against the police force. They will not tell you about it on television, but just because you don't hear about it on television, don't assume it's not happening. It's happening all over the country. But because it's more serious, they cannot put it on television. And that should be the sign of how serious we are. Because when we were just playing, they put it on TV and they used to laugh. But it's becoming serious. They cannot laugh anymore, so they do not put it on television. We've got to understand that. We've got to understand that. Then once we have made and got to the tools of oppression, then we go to the oppressor himself, seize power, and we begin the revolution. Now, as we move towards the steps of seizing power, there are a lot of political movements that we make. We have to make those political movements because they are at that time a political necessity. And if that's what we have to do, that's what we will do. For example, the coalition with the Peace and Freedom Party to help get the publicity for Brother Huey P. Newton and the freeing of Huey P. Newton was a political necessity. And we have to try and understand those political necessities and work with them within that perspective, within that given perspective. Now then, if we agree that the police force represents the tool of the oppressor, that we're moving against the tool of the oppressor, our question is, how best can we move against the oppressor? Now that's very simple. When Brother Malcolm X was talking and when he was educating, a lot of us were not paying very close attention to him. We paid attention to Brother Malcolm when he entertained. When he said, we're going to wipe out the white man, we're going to go down with guns and shoot him up, then everybody said, yeah. But when he explained what had to be done, nobody was listening. If we were listening, we would know where we had to go today. Let me give you a quote from Brother Malcolm X. I don't remember it correctly, but it goes something like this. He says, show me a Frenchman who has fought in Indochina, and I will show you a white man who's got the shakes. Show me a Frenchman who's fought in Algeria, and I will show you a white man who's got the shakes. He continues, as a matter of a fact, show me a white man who has fought in Asia or Latin America where there has been guerrilla warfare, and I will show you a white man who's got the shakes. What Brother Malcolm's saying was clear. Guerrilla warfare is where you got to go. He said it. But we weren't listening to him at that time. We were listening to him when he was bad, not when he was proper. Because we would understand that. And he's absolutely correct. He's absolutely correct. Brother Malcolm says the essence of guerrilla warfare is you wait until the sun goes down, and then it's even Steven, man for man, man for man, man for man. And if we were preparing for that today, we could be prepared for the stage of guerrilla warfare. But since we were listening to entertainment, today we have to begin to educate ourselves. Guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare because you cannot fight an armed conflict with a force that is superior to you. Guerrilla warfare because the man does not know who is doing what, when they are doing it, and he is forced to come down on the entire black community. Guerrilla warfare. We should have been listening to Brother Malcolm X. Guerrilla warfare because in a war you don't fight to die, you kill to live. You kill to live. You don't go out in the street and shoot up and die like a hero. You dead. If you live, you could kill 50 more tomorrow night. That's 50 less that we have to worry about. But you go out there, shoot 2 and die, you ain't doing nobody no good. Guerrilla warfare is where we have to go. Guerrilla warfare is where we have to go. And if armed with the correct political ideology, we begin to employ those, we recognize where we must move. If we were reading Brother Huey P. Newton, he explains very clearly. He says, in the beginning, there are above-ground groups. These above-ground groups are always forced underground. It is clear, as it should be clear in all our minds, that the man is moving to break up and destroy all groups that are above ground, that we are going to be sooner or later pushed underground. And unless we begin to prepare ourselves now, we will find our struggle set back. Our struggle can never be set back. Our motto must be, we must always move forward. We can never move back, nor will we ever stand still. We must move forward. And we have to understand that as a motto. Right on, brother. Right on. Now then, we have to talk about the levels on which we move. We move on 3 levels. Now, before I do that, I want to talk a little about the pigs and why it is a necessity that we begin to understand the war against them. Because they will escalate their war against us. Their job is to keep things the way they are. That's what they call law and order. That's their job. And anytime there are disruptive elements in the community, their job is to destroy those disruptive elements. Therefore, by necessity, the police force is going to increase its harassment, is going to increase its intimidation, and is going to increase its brutalization against us. We have to be prepared for that. If we are not prepared, stay under the bed. Don't wear a black leather jacket unless you're ready to kill, because they ready to kill you. Don't wear it. Don't wear your hair natural unless you're ready, because they're going to call you a nigger agitator if your hair is natural. And you can't fry your hair because you're still a nigger and they don't trust you. So we have to prepare ourselves whether we like it or not. Now as we move on 3 levels, and we must move on those 3 levels: the political, the economical, and the social, or as we call the cultural level. We have to constantly move on those 3 levels at the same time. We can never move on one and disregard the other 2, or move on 2 and disregard the other 1. We must always move on all 3 levels. Now, there have been some discussion that has developed in our community concerning the movement among the cultural nationalists. Many people feel that because they have now found out that they are black and beautiful, that they wear afros and dashikis, that they have won the battle. That is not true. Culture, like the gun, is necessary but not sufficient. Being a cultural nationalist is necessary, but it is not sufficient. Having once begun to recognize our culture, which is needed as a cohesive force for our people, we now say, I recognize I am black and beautiful. I recognize my ancestral heritage in Africa. Now, let us begin the political and economical struggle. We have to do that. Too many times people stop at the cultural level. And the man wants us to stop at the cultural level, because the cultural level is no threat to his political or economic system. And if we intend to be free, we got to move against his political and economic system, not just his cultural system. Now, he's putting on more Be Black programs than the cultural nationalists are. He's got a program on Tuesday nights called Of Black America, which is as black nationalist as you can get. So he wants to take over the program of cultural nationalism. He wants to co-opt the program, but he can never co-opt our political or economic program if we're moving against him. And that's what we have to understand. Now then, we want to... people getting bored, don't they? They all look so bored. You know, boy. I'm not very good at teaching, but I think we've got to stop entertaining. We've really got to do this type of work. Even though it's hard, we've got to do it. Got to do it. And we've got to take time out to do it now, because he's not going to let us have too many more rallies like these. Pretty soon he's going to cut these rallies up, and we won't be having that many of them. So unless now that we have the chance we're able to begin to talk to each other about the correct political ideology, we will find ourselves quickly destroyed and our struggles stop. Now then, we want to talk about the international implications of our struggle. And we must talk internationally, because more and more we can move internationally against the man, because the United States is the greatest imperialist world power today. If that means she is an imperialist power, she's got to have people all over the world protecting her riches. The United States got to have bases in Latin America to protect all the resources that she steals from the people of Latin America. The United States has to have bases in Asia and Africa, because she has to protect the resources that she steals from Asia and Latin America. Now let me give you an example. The United States says that China is going to be their number one enemy, and they must stop China. The People's Republic of China does not have one base outside of China, not one armed force base outside of China. The United States of America has 2,500 bases outside of the United States of America. Who is whose enemy and who is fighting who? How come China don't have no bases outside of China? How come Cuba don't have no bases outside of Cuba? The United States got bases in Vietnam. The Vietnamese should have bases in the United States of America. That's right. Right. The United States has a naval base in Cuba called Guantanamo Base. The Cubans should have a naval base in the United States of America. The United States has bases in Germany, in Africa, in Asia, and Latin America. All of those countries should have bases in the United States of America. That's equality. Equality. And we've got to understand that. And we must understand this talk about communism. The United States is not against communism. The United States wants to expand her power and conquer the world. And the one force that's stopping her is the People's Republic of China and the Black Panther Party, of course. And we must understand that expansionist theory of the United States. If the United States were against communism, Russia is communist. Russia has invaded Czechoslovakia. Russia is spreading communism in Czechoslovakia. If the United States is against communism, let her invade Czechoslovakia and stop the Russians. Hey, why not? She's in Vietnam. She says she's invaded Vietnam to stop the North Vietnamese from coming into South Vietnam. Well, the Russians are doing the same thing in Czechoslovakia. Go to Czechoslovakia and stop the Russians. Lyndon Baines Johnson. They will not go to Czechoslovakia because they are not against communism. They want to expand their bases, and they are not going to fight in Czechoslovakia because it is a white country. Yes. Everybody used to tell us that the Vietnamese war is not a racist war. Well, if they're against communism, why they go ahead and fight in Czechoslovakia? If I'm against my enemy, every time he moves, I'm going to try to cut him down. Why, if they don't stop Czechoslovakia, Russia might be at our front doors tomorrow. The John Birch Society, the Ku Klux Klan, the Knights of America, and the old women from the American Daughters Revolution go fight the Russians. And that should be our program. We should constantly push that. Whenever you get a chance, tell them, go fight in Czechoslovakia. We want you to stop communism. And let's see what the reaction will be. So if we begin to understand the contradictions in the American system, then we will begin to educate ourselves. We have to understand Cuba. Now, the little island of Cuba is one of the bravest islands in the world. I mean, they don't play. They tell America in no uncertain terms that no matter what you do, America, if you come in here, we're going to fight you. No matter how big you are, America, we're going to fight you. As a matter of fact, last year when I was at the celebration, Fidel Castro said, let it be clear to America, this is an island. When you invade, there's only water around us. There can be no retreat. Yeah. And we have to say the same thing. Let it be clear, pigs, that we are surrounded by suburbs. There can be no retreat. We've got to stand and fight where we are. Where we are. Can't retreat. And we should begin to encourage our people to travel to Cuba so that we can learn what the Cuban government is doing, how they are doing it, why they are doing it, and begin to see what we can learn from them and apply to our situation. That's important. The American government doesn't want anybody to travel to Cuba, to China, to North Korea, to North Vietnam, and lately to the Arab countries. They take passports as they see fit. They bundle people in Mexico and throw them on planes and send them back home as they see fit. But we have to tell them, the United States of America, Lyndon Baines Johnson, Dean Rusk, we will get our passports. We will go to China, Cuba, North Korea, North Vietnam, Algeria, Egypt, Syria, anywhere we want to go. You cannot stop us. We are men, and we will go where we want to go. Period. Period. Man can't tell you where to go. He can give you a passport and say, you cannot use this passport to go there. But like, if you black, automatically they want you. So you don't have to worry about that passport. And we're going to go. We've got to go to these countries because we've got to find out what's going on in these countries. The United States stops us from going to China, Cuba, North Korea, North Vietnam, Albania. They used to stop us from going to Russia. You can go now. It is important to note that the United States does not stop us from going to South Africa. You can go to South Africa if you got an American passport. And if you white, or if you're an Uncle Tom. But you can't go to any of the other countries. The United States says that she can't trade with Cuba, China, Vietnam, North Korea, but she allows people to trade with South Africa. And then she says, well, those are private people, and we can't tell the private people how to trade. But they tell the private people not to trade with Cuba, China, North Vietnam, and Korea. We must understand the contradictions in the world today. Now then, the Black Panther Party has to go on record as moving beyond the stage of the policy of we're not going to Vietnam. Have to move beyond that. Not only are we not going to fight in Vietnam, the Vietnamese are our comrade in arms. They are fighting against the United States of America. Fighting against it. Anybody who fights against this country is an ally of us. Yes. The more they weaken that country, the better it is for us. If the South Vietnamese strike, the Viet Cong strikes a blow against the American government and its forces in Vietnam, that makes us more powerful because it makes the United States weaker. When we strike a blow in the cities against the United States, its power structure and forces, the Viet Cong become stronger because we have weakened the United States. When the Viet Cong and the black people in this country, with the Black Panther Party, strikes a blow against the United States government, the Arabs become stronger. It's a shot against worldwide imperialism. We have to understand these things. We must study them. We've got to study them, because we can't no longer just run out and yell, burn, baby, burn. We've got to know how to burn, baby, burn, to live to burn, baby, burn. And we have to know that when we burn, baby, burn, we gonna come out better. Let me explain to you the difference between revolutionaries and people who just hope. A man will get up and say, I wish they burned down this city. And he'll yell, burn, baby, burn. Then the people are burning down. But then he doesn't have the forces to take over the city once it's burnt down. He hopes. A revolutionary plans. Once he burns the city down, he takes the city, seizes it, and holds it, and runs it the way he wants it run. That's a revolutionary. That's a revolutionary. And that's where we have to go today. We cannot just be satisfied with saying burn, shoot, kill. We have to know who to shoot, who to kill, who to burn. After it's done, we've got to be able to seize the power, take it, hold it, and give it to the masses of our people. Now we're talking revolution. Now we're talking revolution. And if you're talking revolution, you're talking about 24 hours a day. You're talking about training, getting your guns, breaking them down at night, in the dark, putting them together again, knowing a 9mm from a 45, from a 30-OR bullet. When you put it in your gun at night, you can feel the sizes and tell which is which. You got to prepare to do that now if you're talking about real revolution. You got to know that as well as you know the political ideology of the books that we must be reading. The works of Chairman Mao Zedong, the features of Malcolm X, Che Guevara, Franz Fanon, Huey P. Newton. Got to read those things, understand them, and begin to apply them to our situation here. Got to do that. And we've got to pick up the little black book by President Kwame Nkrumah and read that and understand it too. That's beginning to talk about becoming revolutionary. And as we begin to move our forces, we can begin to give solidarity pledges to those people who internationally are fighting the United States, as Cuba, as China, and as the Arabs in the Arab world. We have to give them our solidarity pledges and begin to understand how we move with them against the United States of America. The time is fast coming when we won't have very much to say or very much to do. Our struggle is not going to be a quick or short struggle. It is going to be a long, a hard, and a difficult struggle. It's not going to be over in 3 summers. It's not going to be over in 5 summers. The Vietnamese have been fighting for 25 years. Black people in this country can expect no less. We prepare for a struggle of at least 25 years and ready to go if it takes 3 generations. We've got to understand that. Now, revolution is not made by people talking bad. Revolution is not made by people running in the streets. Revolution is made by a people armed with the correct political ideology and the correct moment in history. Black people, whether we like it or not, are the force. This is the precise time in history to strike that revolutionary blow. And whether we want it or not, history has put us in that position, and we have got to fight. We cannot fail history. We've got to become that revolutionary force. We can do no other. We cannot run even if we wanted to. There is no place to run, brothers and sisters. We have got to fight, and we might as well prepare for that fight. We are going to have to suffer, and we might as well prepare for that suffering. Whether we like it or not, they are going to move to wipe us out. So just for our very survival, we have to fight. For our very survival, we have to fight. You see the goon squad they have in San Francisco, the tactical police, it is the beginning of the Gestapo forces inside our community. If we do not move now against those forces, tomorrow will be too late. We have got to move. We can't run. There's no place to run. We can't run to Africa. They're fighting in Africa. All we can do in Africa is fight with our brothers and sisters. That's all. You can't run and be no American Negro in Africa. You get there, you're just like anybody else, and they're going to put a gun in your hand, and you're going to have to fight. And we can learn from Africa. We can learn the tactics that the United States uses. She divides a people. Has it not always been a fact that the one thing that has kept us so weak is that we have always been, as a people, divided? Yes. Yes. And does she not use this tactic all over the world? Does she not pit brother against brother? Is she not making North Vietnam fight South Vietnam, North Korea fight South Korea, East Germany, West Germany? Now she's got Biafra fighting Nigeria. It is always the same thing wherever she has moved, and she is going to use it more and more against us. So we must prepare. We cannot begin to fight each other inside our community. We have to understand that. And that's revolutionary. Whenever you hear the figures in the Vietnamese War, you hear Viet Cong, so many dead, American soldiers, so many dead. You very rarely hear about South Vietnamese dying. The reason is that the Viet Cong never attacks the South Vietnamese soldiers. They do not attack the South Vietnamese soldiers because they know the South Vietnamese soldiers are not their major enemy. Their major enemy is the aggressive forces of the imperialist United States of America. And when they strike a blow at them. As a matter of fact, the Viet Cong told me that if the South Vietnamese attack them, they run from the South Vietnamese, and they only fight them when it is absolutely necessary. Mao Zedong did the same thing when he split from the Kuomintang in 1927, organized the Red Troops. Whenever the forces of Chiang Kai-shek came after them, they pleaded with their Chinese brothers not to fight. They even retreated from several battles, and only when it was absolutely necessary did they wipe out their Chinese brothers. Did not Fidel Castro do the same thing? Did he not go to the Cuban bourgeoisie and get their support? And after he seized power, he said to the bourgeoisie, this government is a government of the masses of the people of Cuba. Either you with me or you go against the wall. If they weren't with him, he put them against the wall, he shot them. But he couldn't shoot them before he took power because he'd be fighting the bourgeoisie and Batista. We can't fight each other and the racist, imperialist structure that we have to begin to understand and fight against. We can only wage one war at the same time, one war at a time. But it's also a fact that the people who are split and divided and fight against us are puppets of the American government. The South Vietnamese are puppets of the American government. If the Viet Cong destroyed Key, they would put Thu in. If they destroyed Thu, they would put Diem in. Every time they destroy another Vietnamese, there's another puppet to be put. But if you destroy the puppet holder, the puppet is cut free. And then you have the power to make the phenomena act in a desired manner. And that's what we must understand. If we fought the Uncle Toms in our community, every time we knocked them down, they'd put another one up. If we say the Uncle Toms do not speak for the masses of our people, then it's obvious they're in power because the United States government supports them. So that if we fight them, we will cut the Uncle Toms loose, and then the Uncle Toms can decide which side they're on. We'll have the power, and we can move against them one way or the other. Finally, our historic moment is here. We must begin to prepare for the struggle that is ahead of us. There were several attempts in the past in our history. The Garvey movement was channeled to the side because Garvey did not bring together all three, political, economic, and cultural. We have to begin to understand that. Religious movements in the past have brought our people together, but they have not attacked the political, economic, and cultural, social structure of the society. As we move today, we must attack all three, political, economic, and social, and move against them. And move against them, ready to win or to die. I end with Che Guevara's saying, in a revolution, one wins or one dies. Thank you.
Stokely Carmichael, ladies and gentlemen.